I left in 2023. I wanted to go to Tunisia. I wanted to cross the Mediterranean like young people do these days. First, I wanted to go to Italy, and from Italy, try to get into France. When I arrived in Algeria, it was tough. I worked on a construction site for a while. When the police catch you, they take your phone and your money. Then they take you to some sort of fake prison, where you sleep is where you go to the bathroom. It could make you sick. You could die in that place. Every day I asked God to send me back to my country. That's what I was asking God for every day. It was my only prayer. My friend said to me, let's go. And I said, no, I can't go. Come on, let's go. You're afraid, you're cursed. We'll make the crossing. We'll go to Europe. I said, no, I'm going back home. I can't take that risk.
That night, 13 of them landed in Abidjan, Ivory Coast's economic capital. None of them would let us film their faces. Only Aruna Karamoko agreed to tell his story. After months of hardship in North Africa, this 27-year-old Ivorian applied to the IOM, the International Organization for Migration, for a voluntary return to his country.
What I missed the most was my family, my son. In fact, I wanted to see them as soon as possible. As for my girlfriend, may she rest in peace, she passed away on January 13th. I couldn't believe it. We used to talk on the phone, and then all of a sudden, someone told me that she died. It felt so weird. And so I thought, I need to go home and find out what's really going on. My family told me not to come, but I said, I'm coming. They told me that if I came, they wouldn't talk to me. But they're over there, we're the only ones who know the reality here. So I came back without telling anyone. No one even knows I'm here.
They didn't tell family and friends about the trip, aware that their return would be seen as a failure. These returnees are known as the cursed, but many of them are relieved, hopeful for a new start.
I'm Nicole. I work for the IOM.
Nice to meet you.
This is your IOM card. This card shows that you're one of our beneficiaries. When you contact us, or when we contact you, we will often ask you for these codes so that we can find you in our files.
The IOM guarantees some financial assistance to encourage migrants to return home. A few hours after their arrival, some are disappointed.
In Algiers, at the IOM, we were told that we would receive clothes, a phone, and shoes, along with a sum of 160,000 CFA francs. That's 245 euros. That's what they told us. Here, we just got 32,800 CFA francs, that's just 50 euros. We didn't get what was mentioned over there, so we thought we'd let you know.
Is that what our colleagues told you over there?
Yes, that's what they told us we'd be getting when we arrived here on Ivorian soil.
It's a harsh landing for these former migrants. Responding to this sense of disappointment, the IOM representative in Ivory Coast says they were acting in good faith.
So yes, it's complicated for people to find their way through the various forms of assistance we provide. It's hard to explain these differences to migrants because they talk among themselves and have their own expectations. We've been running these programs for years. It's important to understand that we are dealing with people who often return by default, not by choice. That is, they left Ivory Coast with a certain destination in mind. They had plans, hopes for a better life, a different life. And often, when they contact us, it's because their project has failed, or things didn't go according to plan. So we are dealing with people who are frustrated and who express it when they get here. That's why the help we provide is never enough.
Since 2017, the IOM office in Ivory Coast has organised the return of over 14,000 people, but it's estimated that tens of thousands have returned of their own accord. Ivory Coast's huge economic capital, Abidjan, is growing, with sprawling suburbs stretching from the city centre. Jeanne d'Arc Zagoré decided to move to one of these new districts, which is still under construction. This mother of two lived in Tunisia for 7 years. She came back empty-handed and had to start again from scratch.
I've been cooking for the construction workers and the people who live in my neighborhood for almost 4 months now. So I had to find something that would put food on the table for my children and for myself. So what I'm doing supports 6 people plus me. I'd say that since I returned to Ivory Coast, I've had to fight. It's a struggle. There's the struggle to integrate. I'm fighting to assert myself as a person, as an individual.
In Tunisia, Jeanne d'Arc had her passport confiscated. She was then kidnapped and sold into slavery to a Tunisian family. When she returned, she tried to settle in Gagnoa, her family home in central Ivory Coast. But she was rejected there and ended up sleeping rough on the streets of Abidjan. A tough time when only her mother stayed by her side.
Unfortunately for me, like for many other migrants, it hasn't been easy because my family didn't welcome me back. I was hoping they'd have a different attitude, but unfortunately it was as I expected. At first they were very cold, and then it was rejection. That's what it was. I was rejected by my family. In short, when I came back, my family didn't want to hear about what I went through. No one ever asked me what had happened there, where I was and all that. No one ever wanted to know what I really experienced, so when nobody asks, you don't tell. What really hurt me was the fact that they said very clearly, you didn't do a damn thing with your life when you left. It was made very clear to me I hadn't done anything with my life. When there were family gatherings, I wasn't invited. Because basically, when you have nothing, when you come empty-handed, what can you bring to the family? There was the wedding and dowry ceremony of my eldest. I wasn't invited. If you haven't achieved your goals, you always feel this great sense of shame. Because we set certain goals for ourselves so that we can be like everyone else. And until we achieve them, that feeling of shame stays with you. To this day, 4 years later, I still haven't gone back to see my family yet.
In this new neighbourhood, with new neighbours, Jeanne d'Arc feels more at home.
We serve food here, but they're busy right now. Normally they decide what time they eat. So when we finish cooking, the pots are ready, and when they come to ask for food, we serve them. It's like being at home because ultimately they're brothers who I live with. I adopted these people who also adopted me. No one knows anything about my previous life. No one knows who I was. My secret identity, as my daughter likes to say.
Yassin Bamba, a teacher and researcher, heads up AVSI, an Italian foundation which specializes in issues related to migration. He's particularly interested in this phenomenon, the exclusion that former migrants face.
Young people embarking on these migration routes are generally part of a family strategy. When I say family strategy, I mean they're considered to be family investments, investments in terms of economic and social capacity for the family. So if you imagine that a person's departure was financed collectively with a common social and community goal, then when this person fails and returns, it feels like someone has placed his capital in the bank and has not had a return on the investment, like it didn't generate any interest payments. So the analogy would be that this social investment is understood as a kind of reinvestment in the community, in financial and economic terms, but also in social terms. We'll say, for example, X's son has arrived from Paris, X's daughter arrived from Italy. What an honour for the family. So it is perceived both as a contribution in economic terms and in terms of social status, if I can put it that way.
In Ivory Coast, emigration to North Africa and Europe is largely an urban phenomenon. Abidjan, the economic capital, is the major point of departure and sometimes where they return to. In second place is Daloa, in the centre of the country. At this geographic crossroads, convoys head north every week to join the main migration routes across the Sahel.
Allô? Oui.
Okay, wait for me at the Cassava roundabout. I'll pick up 2 people and I'll be there in a moment.
Claude Tano experienced life as a migrant as well as the painful journey back home. He set up an NGO, Diaspora Hebukayeu, which aims to help vulnerable people in similar circumstances. Since 2019, he's been crisscrossing the neighbourhoods of his city to meet returning migrants and those looking to leave Ivory Coast.
There's another young man here who works near the MTN shop. I went to St. Joseph's School to raise awareness. The next day, he came to see me. He was ready to leave at a moment's notice. The boys were going to go as a group. Because of everything we explained to him, he decided to stay. Today he's working here. When migrants come back like that, it's true that at first we can give them financial support. But why not put them back to work somewhere right away? And when a migrant comes back, he needs a change of environment, so finding him a job helps. Because when he starts working, he makes new friends. People talk, he forgets the stress he experienced. And that's what I would have liked.
In his hometown, Claude Tano checks in on those who went abroad. Some of these returning migrants are exasperated, demanding that the government give them the aid they've been promised.
We filled out form after form after form so that they would finally give us the money. There was so much back and forth. And when we got the 160,000 CFA francs, we were told, go to your villages. This money is to be used for transportation. We've already taken your references. We'll call you in 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, we all went back to Daloa. These are people who have come in distress and have nothing. What kind of paperwork can they provide? They made us put these files together, and we're still doing paperwork. We have nothing. Out of 120 people, so far only 3 got the money. 2 women, 1 man received government aid. And today they've abandoned us. We're on our own.
Marie Godot Kouadja spent nearly a decade in Tunisia before returning in 2022 with her son. She too feels abandoned.
We're tired of always being asked the same questions. Oh, what was it like in Tunisia? What was your experience? Oh, it's so difficult. Oh, but no one helps us. There's no solution. There's nothing's happening. Lots of people have come back, and it's likely that many more are going to get ready to return. So it's not about telling people, yes, listen, illegal immigration is not good. It's wrong. You're going to die. But people are already dead in their minds. They're already dead. So they don't care. They want to leave, to try and move forward.
As a single mother, she was eligible for emergency assistance. But 18 months later, she has nothing left and hasn't got the energy to take on the administration. As she tells her story, Marigodo Kouadja invites us to her home.
Welcome to my home. This is my little villa. This is where I live with my 8-year-old son. It's where I did my training. Right here. My little life, my little home. That's it. Here you have my products. This is the raw material I use to make my cosmetics. So shower gel, shampoos, creams, cleanser.
Ce stade-là, je pense, je vais mettre... Ça, c'est l'acide de panique.
I remember my father sitting me down and telling me that taking off on an adventure was not easy. I didn't listen at all. I was ready to go. I didn't listen to him. But today, at my age, it's not important to me anymore. What matters to me now is my well-being and my son's well-being. I couldn't take it anymore. If I had stayed one more minute in Tunisia, I would have gone crazy. I couldn't do it. It was too much to bear. People you're talking to today who leave their house and say goodbye, you know, people who set out on this journey never say goodbye. They never say, oh, I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm going to take the boat. But the next day you hear, oh, you know that friend you had? She took the boat. She ended up in the water. They just say it like that. I stayed there for 12 years. Can you imagine how many people I lost? Is that really an adventure? No. I think I learned that happiness is not necessarily all about money. Maybe I understood that. I don't know how it is that I'm doing fine. I don't have any money. But my son is here. He's healthy. He goes to school. That's what I wanted, right? To come home so he can go to school. I got what I wanted, so it's okay.
In Daloa, Claude Tano has a more delicate task during his daily rounds, visiting the families of migrants who've disappeared.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Okay.
He set out from here with his friend. I went to the main road with him. I only had 1,000 CFA francs, which is €1.50 in my pocket. And I wanted to give it to him. He told me to keep it for food. He asked me to pray for him.
Gefa Diomande and Sanogo Mawa's son, Mohamed, left in 2017. He worked for 6 years on construction sites in Algeria before moving to Tunisia.
Before he left, he was very sad about our standard of living, our conditions here. It made him cry. Our child left out of compassion for his parents. He left because he felt so much pity for us. From here, he went to Algeria. He worked there and earned some money, which he sent us regularly. While our son was in Tunisia, my eldest daughter died. This is her husband. her son-in-law. She left 2 boys without their mother. The eldest said he wanted to join his uncle in Tunisia. I begged him to stay here, but he wouldn't listen to me. So the child left. And he managed to find my son in Tunisia. They were there, and then they took a boat.
The last time they spoke to him was on the morning of August 3rd, 2023. He was boarding a dinghy headed to Italy. They've not heard from him since. In the summer of 2023, nearly 14,000 Ivorians landed on the Italian island of Lampedusa. But how many have tried their luck and ended up stranded in the Sahel, or have died in North Africa at the gates of Europe? How to explain all these deadly journeys when Ivory Coast is one of the fastest growing countries on the African continent? Does it all come down to social inequality? Not according to Gausu Karamoko.
Migration from Ivory Coast cannot be explained in economic terms. In any case, it's not primarily economic, because migrants manage to save up to pay for migration routes, which sometimes cost more than 3, 4 or 5 million CFA francs, which is about 4.5 to 7,000 euros. On the other hand, what can explain migration is this mentality we have created, making people believe that they can get rich quick on the other side. People presume that in France or elsewhere, it's easier to amass wealth than here. So someone with a moderately lucrative activity feels that if he goes to the other side, he can earn money more quickly because the value of their currency is high, that France is superior, for example. In short, there are a set of clichés that go along with migration and explain that when a child returns or when a young man returns, his family doesn't accept his return. The other reason is the employment issue, which is very much misunderstood. Someone who has a driver's license in Ivory Coast, who drives what is known in our country as a baka, a minibus, who has a small house that he can pay for, who manages to feed himself and his small family decently, will tell you, I don't work, I get by. Because 1, he works in the informal sector, and 2, he believes, and this is something many young Ivorians believe, that he does not have a salaried job where he gets a check at the bank at the end of the month. In his mind, being an independent worker means getting by. It's not a profession, even though he lives decently from it. You have to explain that he is not at the bottom of the social ladder. He has value, dignity. He's contributing to the development of this country. You have to maintain this sort of discourse and show him that he's not a failure.
Yet many Ivorians still feel marginalised, a sentiment exacerbated by internal migrations as people flock to the cities. With its urban highways, bridges, skyscrapers, shopping malls, and some 7 million residents, Abidjan is undergoing a major transformation. But in order to build, you have to demolish. Here it's called déguerpissement, displacement. In one of Abidjan's neighbourhoods, at Tekoubé, a toll bridge is emerging. It's an ominous development for local residents. Sekou Sila directs Colombe Ivoire, an NGO which assists and represents people who've been displaced. 1,200,000 people have been affected, that is 1 in 6 residents here.
People were living here peacefully. They didn't have any problems. To their surprise, the ministry came to see them, saying that they were going to clear them out. We told them, no, 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 they must receive compensation first before they can leave.
When they went to negotiate, they'd specified that they were going to participate in negotiations first, before anything was torn down. But they skipped those steps. They came, they caught people by surprise, and they broke everything. But when the price of the land itself is not included in the indemnity that they give you, can you buy a plot of land and relocate? So households were split, and the consequences were huge. Even the question of migration that you mentioned is one of the consequences. If someone tears down your home and your mother and father are thrown out on the street, you, the child, have to go and find the means to help your parents. That's a fact.
My son left. My son left. He spent 7 months in Libya. He saw my situation. I said, go. Even if you die in the water, it's better. He left and he's now in France. Why should we stay living in misery? So we negotiated, but even the money we were offered wasn't worth it. It's not worth it. We cannot even buy a plot of land.
How much?
For me here, it was 3.5 million francs. That's 5,400 euros. 3.5 million francs for a house with 4 rooms.
In 2019, the government announced its target. It hopes to evict residents from the city's 132 most vulnerable neighborhoods by 2025.
Here you see someone's armchairs. They come and tear down houses with 48 hours notice, with no compensation. And they think it's normal. They ruin people's lives. You lose your house, you lose your belongings, you lose your job.
Work is indeed the big issue. Adama, Abdul and Yaya spend their days looking for employment in the neighbouring district of Abobo. Without qualifications, these three friends scour construction sites in the hope of being hired for the day. To finance their departure, many would-be migrants take on a string of odd jobs. 9 out of 10 of those jobs are in the informal sector, the driving force of the national economy. One morning in February 2023, this trio boarded a bus bound for Europe.
We left Abidjan. The goal was to get to Tunisia, then cross the water to Italy, and then to arrive in France. But ultimately, we realized that it wasn't easy at all. We boarded the back of a truck. They put the luggage on the bottom, fastened it with a tarp, and put a net on top. All 35 of us sat in a row like this, with ropes tied around us so that we wouldn't fall off. There was a girl in our truck. The driver pointed a gun at her. He told her he was going to have sex with her, otherwise he would kill her. So she was forced to accept it.
Their journey was extremely difficult and the memories are painful. Since their return, barely 5 months after their departure, things are not the same. The three friends are bored. Former employers don't return their calls and their neighbourhood friends ignore them.
Generally, when someone goes to Europe and then comes back, they always have friends around them. People would say, here's a Binist, an Ivorian who comes from France. And he'd show off his money and give gifts. But if you leave and it doesn't work out, your status changes and people shun you.
Now the trio has one major goal: to leave again.
Often we come together, we sit down, we talk. And the question is, how are we going to get out of here? The first thing is to find the money. If we have enough money to undertake part of the journey, we can decide which day to leave and via which route. Even if there are mishaps, unexpected things, now we know how things work. That first try, as we say, Every failure is a life lesson. Everything we've seen, everything we've learnt, we know how things work over there. We know how to travel, how to pay the traffickers and everything.
Avec les passeurs, tout et tout. C'est comment? C'est comment elle, maman? T'as beaucoup de cheveux maintenant. Et là, quand on était au Niger, il est tombé malade. Non, lui, oui. Non, mais maintenant, ça va. Ouais. Tu vois, ça va maintenant. T'as grossi. Tu vois, tu es là pour tout. Tu vas couscous là-bas au champion. Couscous là, c'est pas bon. Non, là, mais attends, là, nous, on veut venir là-bas, c'est comme en route là-bas. Actuellement, il n'y a plus de refoulement, on n'attrape pas les gens, que les routes sont bonnes actuellement.
In the neighborhood, the weight of their so-called failure is too heavy for these young men to bear. They need to prove that they too can get to Europe and that they're not cursed anymore.